I thought Dracula was the horror book I would be reading most recently, but let me talk to you about The Heart of the Ancient Woods, which is a uh, heartwarming, fable like story that is unintentionally um, super bone chilling. I have to say, bone chilling. And I got to the end of it and I thought, it's like, is this an evil book? Is this like, and I'm not talking about the author. I'm not talking about Charles George Douglas Roberts. I'm not talking about him, but is this book unintentionally a freaking horror show, a freaking document number one of just kind of evilness in um um in this world, our world. Yeah, this book really freaking shook me, and it's taken me a little while to get to it. So let's get to it. Start off with Roberts himself. He was born in 1860, died in 1943. Canadian born in New Brunswick, died in Toronto. Knighted, poet, called one of the fathers of the Canadian poetry. Seems to be more from his how he helped out because of inspiration and assistance for other poets, rather than maybe his poetry itself. I've never read any of his poetry, so I don't know. He is notable for creating one of the creators of the animal story, which, along with Ernest Thompson Seton, are told from the point of view of animals. And indeed, he and Seton are cited by Margaret Atwood in one of her kind of seminal works on Canadian literature, talking about how, for the English, it's like all the social differences between the animals. For the Americans, it's about killing the animals. We'll get back to that one. But for Canadians are the ones about the animals being killed as felt emotionally from inside their furs and feathers. And indeed, this was such a thing that it was this kind of telling it from an animal point of view was the nature fakers controversy, which kind of raged until Theodore Roosevelt, while still president, actually sided with the opponents against this kind of writing. And I mean, I think nowadays you would look. The thing that I can cite as modern, which isn't very modern because I'm talking about my childhood, is old Disney animal films where they would have narration, and it would very much be kind of anthropomorphic. Oh, here is little Billy the bear with his mommy bear, and oh, they're just trying to do their best and they love each other, and it would just fill them full of basically kind of human thoughts and human motivations to tell what's usually a pretty saccharine story. Very much Disney. I guess Jack London would be maybe a more respectable thing of, like, White Fang and the Call of the is it the Call of the Wild? I can't remember those kind of that Jack London is probably the guy whose books have survived. This one has not probably has not survived, except for weirdos like me that are going back to the period between 1890 and 1910 and reading stuff from it. And wow, I freaking hit the mother lode here for this story. So yeah, this story it's Christy Craig as shunned and mocked by people of the settlement for her husband leaving her and then appearing in the city and apparently taking up with a woman. They blame her for it. She ends up going into the woods. There's a cabin. I think it's an old hunter's cabin. It might be the lumberman's cabin, old Dave's cabin, and taking up residence there with her very young daughter, Miranda. And yes, Miranda is very much coming from the Tempest and she is, this little girl is kind of an elven fairy girl, not of this world, sort of, who very much can make connection with the animals, has a connection with the furtive folk, is what they calls them. They're the animals which very much bond with her. And oh God, we'll get into that. We'll get into that later. Now, the first chapter of this book is, I almost put it down because we have the old Dave, the lumberman, going through the forest, and all the furtive folk looking at him, and we're hopping from head to head to head to head to head to head of all, like, squirrels, chipmunks, elk, Bear, Kroof, the she-bear, who is going to be a major character in this book, are all watching him, and he's not really particularly aware of much of them. And it was just like, oh, holy crap, if the whole book is like this, I am out. I am completely out. But it does settle down with the second chapter, where we do get introduced to Kirsty, and we get introduced to Miranda, and it becomes much more from their point of view. Now, the story as it goes along is Miranda, she grows up to be a woman, which I think is, in this book, is considered 17. So she is suddenly attracts the attention of young Dave, who I'll just call Dave from now on, because old Dave sort of drops off. He was a young boy at the beginning of the book. He is grown up. He is now a hunter and trapper, which is something that's very much against both Miranda and her mother's kind of ethos. They're not they call themselves vegetarians, but they eat eggs, they eat animal products. Miranda fucking hates fish. She was like, oh, I'll murder as many fish as possible because they're not real creatures. She's made that line, which I think is something that's made to make Miranda seem all that more capricious. Like, she's not being logical about how she'll murder one animal, but she won't murder the other. But they're vegetarian, and very much she takes against Dave at the beginning, because he makes his living by trapping and killing animals. And he doesn't get along with Miranda's other mother, which is Kroof, the she-bear, who her own cub gets brutally killed in a crushing trap early on, and so she ends up bonding with Miranda, and basically it's like I have another mother, a fur mother, and this bear is basically lives with them. And it's Kroof has got all this. We see things from Kroof's point of view. It's very much anthropomorphic. It's like, this is not a wild bear. This is a fantasy animal that Roberts has insisted is real in a way. Like, this is somehow kind of an accurate representation of what nature is like. And we're going to get into the implications of that later, and why I think that writes this book into some really freaking evil fucking places. Now, before I get into that, let me get into one other thing, which I think this book and another book, Alton of Samasco, that I read earlier, which is the whole kind of the whole theme, the whole trope of, it's the empty woods. There's only the animals that are here, that are thinking and caring creatures who want to live in peace and nature. There's only the animals. There aren't any native people in this book at all. And there's some place names which I believe are native in origin, but no native people whatsoever. Now, in this book, I can't say that this is a big thing in this book, but I just like to kind of note that this is a constant theme with some of the books that I've read in this, the kind of colonial literature. It's like in Alton of Samasco, which is very much kind of a Western, Pacific Northwest Western cowboy book. It's an empty land, free for exploitation. You just have to be a strong male guy who's hardworking, and you can exploit the land. It's been neglected, and we can scoop up all these riches for ourselves through hard work. And well, it's not so much kind of capitalistic in this one. There still is that theme of, there's nobody here. Wow, I wonder why there's nobody here. Well, the reason there's nobody here is because that the Canadian government was gathering up, herding, forcibly pushing the native peoples of Canada, also happening in the States, obviously, into reservations. Now, the notable thing with Roberts is that he has a cousin called Duncan Campbell Scott, who is a Confederation poet. He was also a civil servant. He served as the Deputy Superintendent of Department of Indian Affairs from 1913 to 1932. And he says, our objective, this is my Wikipedia research, because that's, how smart I am. Our objective is to continue until there is not a single Indian in Canada that has not been absorbed into the body politic. And there is no Indian question and no Indian department. So yeah, okay, he just wants to invite all these people in, and they're going to become Canadian citizens. Oh, it's all great, except you also, well, not accept that in itself is shitty. That is cultural genocide. But also, when informed of the severe toll that tuberculosis was having in the residential schools, that's the other part of killing. It was called killing the Indian, killing the native person. That he blocked recommendations to fight the disease in the schools, saying that all the deaths, quote, does not justify a change in the policy of this department, which is geared towards a final solution of our Indian problem. And yes, in historical hindsight, final solution has a certain tone to it. But it's also notable. It's like the Indian problem is the existence of Indian, and that the Indians die is still a great way of like, we can absorb them into the body politic. That was bullshit. They also basically made it cut Native peoples off from the economic life of Canada, so they couldn't actually participate in that way. They were interested in killing as many Native peoples as possible through Canadian policy. So I'm just going to note that. I'm going to note that in this very idyllic kind of fantasy fairy thing where all the animals have human thoughts and can think. I'm just going to note that little rotten, festering heart in this book. And that's not the main problem I have with this book. The main problem I have with this book is that, so yes, the main part of this book is that Dave is wooing Miranda, trying to coax her back away from the life, the nature life, which of course, if you're a vegetarian, you're going to waste away. Kristen in this book starts wasting away on all that eggs and fish because she's not getting red meat. You have to have red meat or else you're going to die. And Dave gets her red meat and nurses her back to health. And he's trying to kind of make Miranda, this elfin child, very much still a very child, even though she's a woman, to understand what's going on. So I am going to spoil this book. If that bothers you that I'm going to spoil the book from 1902, you could tune out right now, just, knowing that I'll be continue to rant. I'll just say that this book, with writing itself as a that animals have this agency, that they're basically human beings with fur skins, writes itself into a bit of a corner when the main part of this book is going to be, how are we going to coax Miranda away from this and get back to eating those very same animals that we've showed in this book are living conscious beings that we should take okay, so I'm going to spoil things. So Dave has been hunting for Christy to get her to have meat. Kroof, who had the one death of a cub earlier on, she's got another cub, and it's kind of grown up more. And they're ranging far afield. Dave, he's ranging far afield too, saying like, oh, I'm going to go hunting and get some nice meat for Christy's to have. Maybe I can encourage Miranda to have some. So what does he do? He says, oh, look, there in the distance, there's a young bear. I'm going to shoot a young bear and take some steaks of it back to the family that has a she-bear as basically part of their family, and I'm going to offer them. It's like, if I went out and it's like, oh, my mother-in-law was hungry, so I went out and I shot one of their aunts and I brought back steaks of that, and I thought that was going to go well. So he shoots this young cub, this young bear, which of course turns out to be Kroof's cub. Kroof comes across the skinned, bloody mass of her child, and is pissed, and is hunting Dave down, and pins Dave up in a tree, who's had put his gun down for a moment. And so Miranda, hearing the cries, hearing Kroof's enraged cry, comes over and tells, Kroof is going up the tree to try and kill Dave, who has murdered her child. And Miranda's like, stop. And it's like, instead of like asking Kroof, like, well, why are you so pissed? And then picking up the gun and shooting Dave, she says, stop. And then she shoots Kroof, shoots Kroof dead. Kroof drops, and Dave goes, yeah, I got her. That's his first thought. That is in the book of his, that's my first thought. I got her now. and and Dave gets down for the tree. He kind of off to the side. This is no kidding. Off to the side, kind of just kicks the tied up stakes into the bushes so Miranda doesn't notice, and they all live happily ever after. So basically, the serial killer has murdered a child and kind of covered up the crime, and is now going to woo and marry and have children with the thing. And he's promising he's not going to murder any more. He's not going to murder any more of the furtive folk anymore. They're going to go to thing, but of course they'll probably just buy meat anyways. Miranda's going to let go of all that stuff. So it's just like, holy shit, how evil is this? How? I mean, this. I think this kind of maybe, and it's like it's I don't think Roberts is trying to be intentionally evil here. I think this is just like maybe the logical consequence of this kind of story if you're going to invest this into it. I mean, if there's ever a book could convince me that animals were like this much kind of a thinking creature. I mean, I don't know. I love my dog, so what am I? It's a disturbing book. Maybe this is a book that's going to push somebody towards vegetarianism. It makes me more want to like throttle Roberts, to be honest. It's just like it's just mind-boggling to me. I mean, I think you could make it. There might be a case in here of I should be connecting the absence of native people in this book and connecting them to like the animals, to the animals in this book. Maybe I should be doing that on a deeper thing. I just come away from this book going, holy shit, what the hell did I just read? What the hell? It's like, yeah, you can read horror books and be like, oh yeah, that was kind of a horror. But then you read something like this where it's like, I don't think the author knew. I don't think they understood what was going on in this book. I'm afraid. This was, I will give it to Roberts. A part of the reason why this book affected me so much is that it is charming. It is charming. It charms you. And then we kill Croof. And Miranda marries the murderer. I honestly don't know how to take this book. I don't know. This is definitely, I'm super, super happy that I read this for my 1901 project, because I think this, the mysterious disappearance of Native people in this book, the weird sentimental investing of animals with human minds. It's human minds. I mean, this is the thing. It's like I think we're all meat. I don't believe in souls. I believe that I have as much of a soul as my dogs have a soul, which might be a good bit then, because I invest in my little fur babies. I love them. I'm also not a vegetarian. And I don't know how I'm this book broke me. All right, maybe I'll put that on the thing. This book broke me. I'm going to leave it there. It's just like, this was great. This is great. Sometimes you read stuff from the past and it doesn't touch you and you're just confused by it. Like, why were people interested in this? And then there's other books like, wow, this is pushing a lot of buttons, man. This is pushing a lot of buttons, way more than some kind of contemporary horror could do. It's like, holy shit. Yeah. And it's found horror. I found this in the woods. No one pushed this into my hands. I found this in the woods and it got me. All right. I'm going to leave it there for under 20 minutes review. More videos later.